love America. I love the Constitution. I love the First Amendment. I want to carry and all laws. I love property. And let me tell you something. If you care about your country, read Ludwig von Mises and the 6 lessons of the Austrian Economic School, motherfuckers.
From the streets of Melrose Park to the trading floor of the Merc, he's fought for every dollar he's ever earned. And now, with personal liberty and our system of capitalism under assault in America, he's here to seize back our rights from the government. With a cigar in one hand and a copy of the Declaration of Independence in the other, he's Sean Thompson. And this is the Sean Thompson Show.
Some folks are born made to wave the flag. Ooh, they're red, white,
waste, fraud, and abuse. It's common now to say it. Most people don't remember the mass explosion of waste, fraud, and abuse, or even the reason why Ronald Reagan first decided to run for president. My next guest does. You see, he spent more than 2 decades in politics, in Washington, D.C., the belly of the beast, fighting waste, fraud, and abuse. When you look at his resume, he not only is somebody of character, he only worked for people of character. You see, he served as legislative director for Senator Ron Johnson, in my opinion, the best of the best right now. And he previously was a senior policy advisor for another great senator, Jim DeMint, who I always liked. He also worked for opposition research for Ted Cruz in the very early stages of his presidential campaign. He now is the founder and president of the American Accountability Foundation. Tom Jones, how are you?
Hey, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on tonight.
Well, it's amazing because what I think this reveals and what your mission has revealed and the massive growth and the uncoupling of any financial principles or fundamentals, how debt now is being redistributed, not wealth. That has always drove me nuts. We're redistributing wealth. No, you're not. You're actually creating massive amounts of debt, trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars, untraceable debt. And that is why the policy, in my opinion, is created. I believe the policy is created to be stolen, frauded. And I don't care if you call it Medicare, Medicaid, Obamacare, whatever it is. If you just go back 18 years, $30 trillion added to the debt, and nobody can really tell you where it is, can they?
No, I mean, the best bet is it's probably all in China. Look, we are putting our country in a really severe compromised national security position by allowing essentially foreigners to control the finances of the country. And that's exactly what we do when we run up massive uncontrollable debt through programs that are just on autopilot and not overseen by any of the elected officials. That's why this stuff's so infuriating, because it's mortgaging my grandchildren. It's appalling, and we should be embarrassed by the people we have in Washington who aren't doing anything about it for the most part.
Well, I'm from Chicago, and I can tell you one thing. There is no shame among Democrats. Have you taken a look at some of these imbeciles running for mayor in Chicago? When you look at so much of the ties of both the Chinese communists and the other arena that has always bothered me, because I remember the Cold War, and I'm sure you do. Who were the top, most violent, most aggressive Soviet leaders? Where were they from? From Brezhnev to Khrushchev to Chernenko, they were Ukrainian. The story of World War II and the Azov Battalion in Ukraine. And I'll never forget that unlikable Victoria Nuland, when she worked for Barack Obama. I never liked that whole setup between Ukraine and Obama, because I realize Ukraine is the most corrupt country outside of Chicago, where Obama perfected the skim and the scheme of policy. And I believe that 200, 300 billion, whatever the hell it is, the vast majority of it has been stolen. And it's not just because of the $10 million artwork behind Zelensky's head 6 months ago. I think they're stealing our money as much as China. What do you think?
No, that's 100% what's happening. And, I think you hit it on the nail on the head with President Obama. Obamacare was the greatest explosion of social welfare spending, since the Roosevelt administration. And really, it has proceeded to bankrupt our nation. And we have been focusing on the massive expansion of Medicaid, which is turned into basically structured grift for companies that are making millions upon tens of millions exploiting vulnerable young children. And this is exploding all over the country. The Democrats aren't taking it seriously. Really, the only person that has focused on cracking down on it is President Trump, with the assistance of Vice President Vance, to really shut down the fraud and dig into it and really start like cracking some skulls and arresting some people.
Now, I'm going to take advantage of the time I have with you. And I'm going to do this because I think it's important people understand. There are good people that are sent to Washington. There are good people with good intentions and good character. You've worked for three of them, of what I can ascertain.
Yeah.
And, I remember the pushback against all of Barack Obama. Being from Chicago, the pushback by Illinoisans who knew he was a bag man for the Daily Syndicate. That's all he ever was. He was an asset of the Leviathan. From Tony Resco, and Rod Blagojevich's wife is the one who brokered the deal where Tony Resco bought the mansion in Hyde Park, which, by the way, it's not a mansion. And the connections to that underbelly, that half-ass, as it's known in my neighborhood, the Pansy Mafia. And it's funny to see that there was tremendous pushback, but look at what happened to it all, because the plan worked. And the plan was to get so many people subsidized that they clowered Piven all of it. And when you look at Obamacare, there has never been a greater failure in a shorter period of time than Obamacare. From the destruction to our healthcare system, 50% less doctors, hospitals. The hospitals where my kids are born, gone. It's been vacant for years. It's a joke what that system did. And the insurance premiums, crazy. And look at what we did. We send the Tea Party. We send all the good guys. I don't think the good people can have any kind of real reaction outside of informing us all. I think it's time for lawyers, smart lawyers, like Ted Cruz. Like, I think you're a lawyer too, aren't you?
I'm thankfully not a lawyer. I'm an investigator. I dig into the facts. I don't, I try to find out what the law is enabling. I'm not trying to write laws.
So you're like me, too much character to be a lawyer. So you've got people like this who need to challenge these policies because, Tom, what if they are unconstitutional? No one has ever convinced me how Social Security is constitutional. Nobody has ever convinced me how payroll taxes is constitutional, an emergency plan that was supposed to be put in place after World War II, and then it just keeps getting signed in. Nobody can tell me how Medicare and Medicaid is constitutional. I don't ever want it. I don't want Social Security. I don't want Medicaid. I don't want Medicare. In fact, I don't want a Democrat to change the oil on my car, let alone touch my naked body as a doctor. Why can't we challenge this?
Yeah, because we don't send enough good guys. I mean, Illinois has been sending knuckleheads to Washington for the last half century. California is sending socialists regularly. We just don't have enough good fighters. I think once in a while we get lucky and we get somebody who's committed to fighting for the everyman. And we're very fortunate with President Trump. He's not beholden to anyone, and he's got the fire in his belly to take on the status quo. Like, if we're going to break up these Medicare schemes that aren't about taking care of people, they're about enriching corporations, we need somebody who just doesn't care, who's like, screw all these guys. I'm going to blow this place up because I don't owe these losers anything. And that's exactly what you have with President Trump. It's what you have Vice President Vance, and it's the only way these corrupt programs like the Medicaid autism program is going to get changed. If somebody comes in and says, look, I don't give a hoot
I gotcha.
about what other folks say. I'm going to fix these problems because the American people sent me here to do it.
Well, and the reality is the lack of interest by an entire, this is the tell, but you're dealing with morons or people who are in on it. This is what in Chicago everybody knows. If you're dumb enough to admit you're a Democrat, you're either a simpleton or you're a policy pirate, which is what my old neighborhood was full of. They knew it was full of poppycock, but they were in on it. They were the recipients. They were the contractors. They were the liaison of the corruption. So at this particular point of an entire half of the country doesn't care about the trillions of dollars that have been stolen. You looked at, I know you saw it at the Capitol where they were having the hearing on the fraud of Medicare. Yeah. Not one Democrat, not one even went to the fracking meeting. At a certain point, we're going to have to implement the rules of the republic and separate ourselves from these people. And I say that because I love Donald Trump. I mean, I think he's earned it, though. I didn't support him blindly. In fact, I didn't trust him, especially when he ran in 2016. I was aware of who he had hired in my own hometown. He gave Rahm Emanuel, the nine-finger Yakuza, $50,000. He hired Ed Burke, who's since gone to jail, and he's out already eating sandwiches again. And, I didn't like that cozy relationship, but he has earned my appreciation and my affection for him. However, he's 80 years old, 81. He's got 2 years left, and he's a lone wolf. I think, and where I've moved was Ron DeSantis country. I think he's the next one that put up the fight and can do it. So we have a steep bench, but does it mean anything if we don't threaten, what our Constitution gives us to threaten? I want to threaten secession. I truly do. I think when you have 11 states make up 74% of the GDP, not a one of them run by Democrats, what the hell do we need them for?
Hey, I live in Kentucky, so I hear you loud and clear. I don't want anything from Washington. I want to be as far as I can from them, both politically and to a certain degree geographically. But you're 100% right on the fighters. Like, what we need is guys who are willing to blow up the grift. The grift is the problem. Like, everybody has found a way to monetize the federal government. They found a way to make money off of a program so that they get personally enriched. We need politicians who have no connection to that, don't need any money from the system, don't want to be reelected, and are willing to go in there and blow that system up. Look, I think that's J.D. Vance. I think after the second Trump administration, there's going to be the Vance administration. He's going to come in. That's the next thing for him to do, and I think he is going to be powerful, and he's not beholden to anybody in the system, because everybody in the swamp hates J.D. Vance, and that's what's going to make him powerful, and that's what's going to bring him in to blow up these corrupt programs that are making money for the pharmaceutical companies, for big ag, for all the multinationals. J.D. Vance is the guy that's going to blow that up because he's not beholden to any of those losers.
Yeah, I don't mind them. I used to have this discussion with Charlie Kirk. We used to go back and forth. I owe a mistake dinner that I'll have to pay him in the afterlife. But it's a fascinating reality to think, okay, we've got these good guys and we've got this knowledge, but there are still so many people, and there are and there aren't. Because if you look at the county results of a presidential election over the last 20 years, just look at the counties. Even in California, 74% never, ever have voted for a communist. So countywide in this country, we're hardcore, responsible, decent citizen. Mm-hmm. It's the 15% of the counties that are really destroying this country, because there is enough money to cut them all in on it. And when you look at Chicago, in my own old town, you look at it, they wallow in it. They're not offended by it. They just want a piece of it. Same thing in New York. And now the rise of the repulsive communists. We have the evidence of the federal government funneling in just Chicago $1.5 billion in food stamps, just Chicago, a year. And they're closing grocery stores, which means the recipients are selling it for cash, and they're buying dope or whatever the case is. They're not using it for what it's intended for. So we got to either rebuild these entire systems and make the provider the only one that touches the money, and stop pretending these people are trustworthy enough to have their own money. They're not. Whether it's rent, or SNAP, or Medicare, they find a crooked doctor to give a crooked thing, and then they hit the ghetto lottery, which is disability. So we've got to eliminate this and really shore it up. Is there any talk of that?
I think there's starting to be talk about it. I think what we're hearing from a lot of folks is that these blueberries in these kind of tomato soup places, look, again, in Kentucky, Louisville is terrible. The rest of the state is wonderful. You've got this around the country, and people are saying, look, these large cities are a gigantic drag on the country. We are sending massive transfer payments into these cities, and they're just dragging down the economy, and they're not pulling their weight, and they're promoting a bunch of social values that most of America hates. So I think there's a lot of discussion about finding out ways where, particularly in red states, where red state governors can go into these blue cities and say, look, we're not doing this anymore. Look, you talk about Ron DeSantis. Ron DeSantis did this in Florida a lot. He went in, threw out corrupt DAs, cleaned up cities, and overwhelming results. That's the part that's exciting, is when these guys do this. Like, they're incredibly popular. DeSantis' numbers were just crazy awesome. So that's my hope, is that's the pathway to what we see, is our guys are we're just not going to tolerate these little blueberries dragging us down and destroying our state.
And I think also, I wonder, when you interact with these people, these Washington people, the way you do, are they aware of the disgust the rest of the country has for the money that has been absconded with, and the fact that these Democrat judges, these federal judges that were appointed by somebody who who was never really qualified in I will go to my grave, and I have never wavered. Joe Biden stole the election, illegitimate from the get-go, incapable of tying his fracking shoes. I mean, when history looks back at this 100 years from now, they're going to laugh their ass off. Look at this idiot you pretended was the president. In the meantime, he splashes the pot to all these blue areas. You're talking trillions of dollars between the COVID money, the PPP loans stole by the government officials. So there has to be some sort of recompense here where people really do go to jail. I've got callers that call every day. I want to go to jail. I want to see people in prison. Now, Blanche is, I think, doing a fantastic job. But do the people in Washington understand we want the players, not just the Somalian morons who go before the judge. We want these governors like Tim Walz. If you can't get this scoundrel and that AG who admitted, got him on tape, he took the $10,000 to run the interference. Ileana Omar, I still don't even think she's a citizen. Isn't there a way to really attack these people?
Look, I think there are a few people that understand it, and the longer they stay in Washington, the worse it gets. But I think that, the president's brought in a few people, whether it's the attorney general, whether it's the vice president, whether it's Stephen Miller. There's a cadre of folks who understand this. But look, there's a swamp that they got to push back against. So what's really crucial is kind of Americans around the country saying, look, we've got the president's back. We want his agenda. We need to have him stop listening to the swamp monsters and really listen to the Americans who hear what's going on the ground and know what kind of change they want. But, the people who get it are very few. Like when I worked in the Senate, I could count on two hands on a good day the number of solid senators out of the 100 were there.
Oh.
So it's a lonely fight. That's why our guys have to support, why the conservatives have to support the good guys, because it's a lonely fight. It's no fun. You don't get to go to any of the parties. Everybody hates you. It's just kind of a miserable personal existence.
See, I love that.
We have to have those guys. It's great, but it's hard. Like, believe it or not, like some of these senators are actually real live human beings. And as much as you're fighting a good fight, it sucks for everybody to hate you. It's no fun to be yelled at lunch 3 times a week, which is what happens in the Senate when you do the right thing. So, like, grassroots America needs to come up, put these guys on their shoulders and say, these are the guys we believe in. The more we do that, the more they're going to be able to fight, sustain the fight, and not get Potomac fever and turn swampy.
I never could stand that Mitch McConnell, not just because he looked like Jiminy Cricket, which he does. He looks exactly like Jiminy Cricket. But when you see what he was able to build, that infrastructure, that's who John Thune is. John Thune never worked a day in his life. What was he, a mannequin at JCPenney? And when you look at these very people who were not only never Trumpers, but they love the system as it exists. Lisa Murkowski is very interesting to me. Most people forget about how corrupt Alaska is. Alaska's like New Jersey with snow all the time. The worst. Her father was, and still alive, 93 years old. And the oil companies, how they're shaken down, and how Joe Biden froze out millions of acres so that you couldn't have competition and all of it. So I think through knowledge, we're going to absolutely win the history dissertation of what we've lived through. I just wonder if you think they're smart enough to articulate the face of greed is somebody who wants you to pay their rent, not you who want to keep your money. Can they do that? Can they make that simple argument? Greed is the Democrat that wants you to pick up his medical bills instead of your own kids. What do you think?
I think if your question is can the message get through, and is there a guy that can cut through all the nonsense to do that? I think the only answer that we've seen in the last 40 years is Donald Trump. And I think he's going to be able to do it. He's going to be able to connect, and he's going to be able to get that message through. But look, the powers of the swamp are strong. The powers of corruption are strong. It's a hard fight, even, it sounds crazy. It's a hard fight even for the president of the United States to get this message through, because all the institutions are controlled by people who profit off of them, who exploit the system for their own personal gain, and let the rest of the 99% of America just kind of struggle and maybe hope to get by. So it's a corrupt system. Yeah.
It's such great timing, though, when you really sit back and think about it. I mean, you've been working on this since you were a young man, over 20 years. Yeah. Now, for finally, all the evidence, and it comes out every day, all the evidence validates all of your claims that you've been making all of this year. I mean, the evidence is so unbelievably revealing. I do believe it in 20 years from now, there is no denying what these plans and these promises by these $2 whores like Barack Obama or Joe Biden really delivered. There is a silver lining to the abuse. The evidence from Fauci to Obamacare to Medicare and to the Somalians in Minnesota, it is actually great. We just got to suffer through the uncomfortable time, don't we?
We do. We just got to power through. We got to hope for the other side. And look, there's no other choice than to fight the good fight. What are you going to do? Cave in, become part of the system? You got to get up every day. You got to fight for what's right for America. You got to fight for your country. And we got a few good people in D.C. that are still doing that, so we got to support them.
Well, and we got to support you, which is why where's the best place to check out everything American Accountability Foundation and keep an eye on Tom Jones?
The Swamp Monitor on Twitter. That's where you find us.
I love it. Thank you for always making time for me. I know how busy you are. Thank you.
Hey, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.